This week, I wanted to spend some time talking about what it means to actually break down your goals when it comes to planning for your dream life. I talk about this concept a lot. I say, build your dream life. Where are you now? Where do you want to get to for your dream life? Let's build a plan for it. And I have found that after working in this career as a financial advisor for so many years, everyone has a different definition of what that means. So I'm going to give you a little insight to my process and how I work with potential clients in order to help them navigate what this dream life really is. So I actually built a workbook that helps us break it down. And if you would like a copy, please comment below and I can get a free copy over to you. And it's also something we provide to all prospective clients when we are working with them in order to help them really just journal and have that free space. And the one piece of guidance I want to give you before you start working on this is for you, right? This journal is your safe space. You may have dreams or things that you want to achieve that may not be supported by others. Oftentimes they aren't. I just finished reading Mel Robbins' Let Them book. It is fabulous. I highly recommend it. I'll put that in the show notes as well so you can grab a copy if you haven't read it already. And she talks all about, just as it says, letting other people have the feelings and emotions that they want to about either choices that you are making or other things going on in the world. And so in this situation, there are going to be moments when people don't support some of your dreams and goals that you have in there. Let them. And you have to take some time and sit in here and say, okay, do their opinions matter? Are they things I want to take into consideration in my life? Or am I really focused on these things? Are they what's going to make me happy? Listen to her book. She provides incredible guidance on figuring out how to navigate those relationships, and it will really help you in this process. So I created this workbook in order to help people have that safe space and also that organized area where they can really journal for their dream life. So I always start our financial planning process by understanding where is it we want to get to? What are we building towards for all of these different time frames in our life? So right now we are at the start of a new year. And so with that, I would ask you, what do you want to happen the rest of this year? What do you foresee happening in 2025? And this people usually have a pretty clear answer on. They're like, let me list this off for you. I want to purchase a car. I want to, have the kids are starting a new school next year. So we want to make sure we get settled into that and are able to support them. I'm actually up for a promotion to VP or director. And so I'm excited to step into that role this year. My spouse is moving into a new role this year. So here's how we're supporting them. And, we're going to take on additional help around the house in order to do all these things. Whatever might be 2025 or any full year, it feels a little more crystal clear. Then I go into and I say, okay, that's great. What does the next year look like? And they sit back and they're like, okay, well, based on what's going to happen this year, I foresee next year X, Y, and Z happening, and they'll rattle off some things. And I share this because as we get further into the time periods, things start to get a little fuzzy, especially if you are someone in your 40s or 50s, what you want to happen in 20, 30 years there's a lot of factors that play into that, whether they are things in your own personal life or in the world that could happen or in the lives of your children that could really impact what happens. And so I also want to remind you as we get further into this timeline and into these years, things are going to change. They are meant to. Whether you are working with myself for a financial plan or another advisor, know that that plan it's going to need edits. It's going to need changes. This is why we revisit it every single year, sometimes throughout the year as well, because things change. That's part of life as we know it. We all lived through the pandemic. The next two time periods we get into are 2 to 5 years and then 5 to 10 years. Now things start to get a little hairy, especially when we're at that 10-year mark. And it's interesting. I was listening to an audiobook the other day, and they talked about how most people underestimate what they can get done in 10 years while they overestimate what they can get done in 6 months. And so I encourage you, be bold when you are looking at this thing and really journaling and say, you know what, in 10 years, we want to buy a second home. We want to be fully paying for the kids to go to college. And it's always great to kind of overshoot those benchmarks so we can stretch and say, okay, this is what we're really driving for. And even too in my own personal life, I always set my goals and then I have my stretch goals of things where I'm like, you know what, we're really driving for that stretch to see what could happen. Then we get into the 10 plus years up until I say 5 years of retirement. So if you are currently 50, you would be looking at that 60, like right around that 60-year mark. What would you want to be happening? Depending on also when you plan on retiring, that will impact things. So in the next 10 plus years, what big things do you want to happen? I was speaking with a client earlier today and they shared with me, they were like, you know what, by this age, I want to reach a status of having a $3 million net worth. And I said, great, let's talk about during our next call what steps really need to happen and what checkpoints we need to be hitting along the way to make sure we are tracking towards that, right? We need to know where we are going and where we are now to figure out those steps and checkpoints along the way. The next area that we look at is 5 years before retirement. Now, it seems like, okay, that's a very specific number. The 5 years before retirement, I'm going to do an entire video just on this. So make sure you're subscribed and following so that way you can get a notification for it. But the 5 years before retirement are critical years, especially when it comes to what is going on in the markets, in the economy, what is going on in the world that can be impacting your holdings, and making sure that you are prepared and financially able to retire in those 5 years. So I'm going to do an entire video expanding on some key things to be looking at during that time frame. But what do you want to be happening in that 5 years before retirement? Are you planning on relocating? What role would you want to be in for the end of your career? Would you also, retirement means something different to everybody, and that is the next section of the journal here. But when you think of retirement, are you thinking, I would just retire from the role I'm in? I would retire from this role and go start a new job. I would retire from this role and go work part-time doing a hobby or a passion project that may earn some money, it may not. Um, or retirement might be, I want to retire and never work a day in my life. Remember, this is your journey and this is your dreams. During those 5 years, we want to know what you want to be happening so we can make sure you're also preparing in that time for your retirement. Now, you may have seen my other videos on this. I talk about the two parts of retirement, which are the last section of the journal here. So, in these two parts of retirement, I always say, and they're never usually the same amount of time, that's just the way life works, and everybody has a different journey. So, that first part of retirement is when you are healthy. You are maybe spending time with the grandkids, traveling, maybe you're even still part-time working or consulting or working on those passion projects. It is the time that people dream of, right? Those golden years where you're in the sun and you wake up at 5 a.m. even though you don't have to anymore because for some reason we all still do that, and you're enjoying life. The second part of retirement can be empowering if you plan for it and are ready. And it is that part where, unfortunately, our health starts to decline. And like I said, this can be varying for anybody. I've had relatives that have unfortunately passed away in the middle of the night, or I've had relatives that have needed a lot of medical care or assistance. And that's where that second part of retirement comes in. It is that time when you might need a nurse. You may be living in an assisted living or retirement home, or you may need to be in more of a high touch facility where you need more frequent medical care. And it's typically we see your medical costs during this time of your life rising. And I want you to journal about this time in your life because you might decide, nope, my kids are going to take care of me. Or I was having a conversation with somebody the other day and she said, my kids have their own kids and really busy, time-consuming careers where I don't want them to have to take care of me. And she shared with me what some of her wishes are. Maybe you want to be able to stay in your own home and have that nurse. Maybe you love playing bingo and want to be able to go to adult daycare or an assisted living home. I get it. I love bingo too. And having that idea of where you want to get to is really important. So that way we can make sure that your assets and your planning lines up with that part of your life. Once again, it may change, right? You may say, hey, my children are going to take care of me, and they may move far away, or they may have kids, or be in a situation where they can't take care of you. And do you have that financial freedom and flexibility to then say, okay, Don't worry about it. You're not in a position to do this. I'm going to hire a nurse or I'm going to go into a facility. So that's where some of those little nuances happen where yeah, things could change. Things can change in the first part of your retirement too, depending on where family is living. Maybe you decide that, you know what, I've traveled enough. I want to just stay in the US and enjoy my life here. And I want to start playing golf and more pickleball and whatever it might be. The key to every part of this journal is knowing it will change and that this is an edible document that you can come back in and make changes to. You can print it out and write. And it's really meant to be the starting point of us understanding here is what the future looks like. So, as I mentioned before, this is a completely free resource that we have for everybody. If you would like a copy, leave a comment below and I can get a member of my team to send it over to you. And it's great. You can print it out. I always encourage people when they do this activity to either print it out, type it, whatever works best for you, light a candle. And if you do have a spouse, you should each do this separately and then come together and do a fresh document together. And you can compare and contrast and see where things differ, where they are the same. And then if you are sitting here being like, okay, we know where we want to get to, we know where we are now. How do we build those steps? You can book a or apply for a complimentary intro call on my website, tannisfingroup.com/contact, and there's an application form on there. You can also contact me if you have any questions as you are going through this activity, and we can start building your plan off of the answers that you have in this journal. Like I said, let this time in your life empower you for what the future holds and embrace all of the exciting things to come. If you have any questions, I'm always here as a resource, and I look forward to seeing you next week.